Very good morning to all of you. Uh, it's a great pleasure to be part of this symposium. I thank Dr. Sharath Reddy for inviting me. Uh, that is MGM Healthcare, where we are providing services to the heart failure patients in terms of heart transplantation and various mechanical circulatory support services. So my topic, hemodynamic monitoring in cardiogenic shock, it has become much easier for me because of the previous speakers, both Dr. Mithilesh and Dr. Sridhar. Now, basically, cardiogenic shock is nothing but there is reduced end organ hypoperfusion because of the decline in cardiac output. And the mortality is very high. It was 50 to almost 80% in the uh, last decade. However, the mortality rate has come down to around 30 and odd because of the advanced hemodynamic monitoring and also primary PCI reduced to balloon door to balloon time less than 90 minutes. Now, 58% of the patients with acute coronary syndrome will require vasoactive medications, invasive hemodynamic monitoring, and also sometimes mechanical ventilation. Now, even though we said mortality has reduced to 30%, it is still a high mortality. Can we reduce the mortality further down? It is possible with the better hemodynamic monitoring and use of various MCS in the early stage. So it is important to identify the cardiogenic shock preemptively. How will you do that? We need to look for the signs of impaired perfusion and hemodynamic compromise. It may be patient may be presenting with cold extremities. There may be delayed capillary refill. They may have hypotension. The pulse pressure may be narrowed, indicating severe vasoconstriction. They may have tachycardia or bradycardia. They may be tachypneic. They may have confused or altered mental status. They may have oliguria or new onset of murmurs. Suppose they have chronic heart failure and there is sudden decompensation, they may present with the jugular venous distension, pulmonary rales, they may have peripheral edema, cardiac ascites, hepatomegaly, and orthopnea. So, how do we use modern technology to preempt or predict the hypotension much before it happens? Uh, you can use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and you can receive the signals from the hemodynamic monitors and the pulse wave analysis, use the complex algorithms, and you can predict a few hours before the onset of the shock. So this is one such monitor where you can detect the hypotension prediction index. Now in this monitor, if you look at the mean arterial pressure, it's good, cardiac output is good, but the HPA or hypertension prediction index is high. That means this patient is going to hypertension in few hours time. So hemodynamic shock basically will result in reduced oxygen supply to the vital organs, result in organ failure and high mortality. How will you prevent that? You can get the clinicians' knowledge, their domain knowledge, and also data from the computers and various machine learning software. So you can have early diagnosis, early interventions, and you can prevent the organ failure and the mortality. Along with hemodynamics, we also need some investigations, lab investigations like lactic acid levels, troponin, just to find out the reason for cardiogenic or shock, the mixed venous oxygen saturation or central venous oxygen saturation, X-ray, chest X-ray, or NT-proBNP, which will be useful along with the hemodynamic monitoring. Coming to the topic, hemodynamic monitoring basically involves the ultrasound monitoring using echo or transesophageal echo. then the invasive arterial pressure, central venous pressure, PA catheter, and various derived parameters, cardiac output, again mixed venous saturation or central venous saturation, and how to apply these parameters in managing the cardiogenic shock. Echocardiogram, echocardiogramic graphic, the monitoring, basically you look at the dilated LV with the poor LV contraction, or TAPSE for RV function assessment. You can also look at the IVC diameter, which is an indirect measurement of effective intravascular volume. Usually it is less than 2 centimeter. Or you can also use the lung ultrasound, which may show B lines, pleural effusion, so you can detect pulmonary edema. Now, the cardiogenic shock, the treatment starts in the emergency room. You can have a rush protocol where you can assess the pump, that is the LV or RV, the volume status, then the tank, which is basically looking at the IVC and various chambers, how much volume is there in the heart, and also looking at the pipe, that is the aorta, aortic dissection or aneurysm, or you can have DVT, or also you can also high map approach where you look at the heart, IVC, Morrison's pouch, aorta and deep veins, or pneumothorax, pulmonary edema, etc. So coming to the hemodynamic monitoring, one of the way to monitor the cardiac outputs is by esophageal Doppler. It will give the Doppler and you can measure the VTI. And if you know the diameter of the descending aorta, which can be determined with the 2D echo, you can actually calculate the cardiac output. Transesophageal echo, of course, is the highly validated uh, equipment to measure the cardiac output. Various hemodynamic calculations, measurements can be done with TE. Now, but you cannot use TE for a longer period because the probe gets heated up. So we have disposable TE probes. Basically, it is a Clarity, and it has got a disposable probe which is the size of a nasogastric tube, and it will have a patented piezoelectric design and give around 7 megahertz of ultrasound frequency with a penetration of around 18 centimeter. So you can actually detach the probe from the main machine, so that if you have one machine, you can use it in multiple patients with multiple disposable probes. So this is the Clarity. This is the blue one is the disposable component, and you can use, you can antiflex or retroflex. This has got a 2D probe, and this is the console where you can have the images. So how will you make use of this probe? You can see the superior vena cava where you can assess the volume status and also volume responsiveness. How will you do that? You keep the probe just above the aortic valve and visualize the SVC in front of the aorta. So you can assess the SVC size and collapsibility index, which gives a better assessment of the volume status. You can also place it in the mid-esophageal and get a 4-chamber wave. Goal is to evaluate the ventricular size and contractility. So how will you position it? It is in the mid-esophagus, slightly retroflex it so that you can visualize all the 4 chambers. So the information you get is the relative size of the right ventricle, left ventricular systolic function, and right ventricular systolic function. And you can also place it in the transgastric short axis wave, where you can assess the preload and the contractility of the ventricle. So advance the probe into the stomach, antiflex it so that you can see the images in the mid-papillary plane. So you can assess the preload, looking at the LV size. You can look at the LV contractility. That's about the echo and TE. Now coming to the invasive arterial pressure monitoring. To begin with, let us see non-invasive method of looking at the arterial pressure. This is the ClearSight, where you can actually measure the continuous measurement of the arterial pressure is possible. And also looking at the area under the curve, it also gives the cardiac output. Of course, the gold standard is to have an invasive arterial blood pressure. It gives the systolic pressure, diastolic pressure, and you can calculate the mean arterial pressure by adding systolic pressure plus 2 into diastolic pressure divided by 3. And you can also calculate the pulse pressure, which is nothing but the difference between the systolic pressure and diastolic pressure. And pulse pressure will be narrow with the severe vasoconstriction. You can also have pulse pressure variation with respiration when there is a hypovolemic state. You can also measure the cardiac output with the invasive arterial blood pressure. That is, the area under the curve indicates the stroke volume. Stroke volume into heart rate, you can actually calculate the cardiac output. And also you can look at the stroke volume variation. So that will give you an idea about the volume status. So this is the flow track sensor, which actually gives the cardiac output using the invasive arterial line. And if you attach it to the CVP line, you can actually measure the systemic vascular resistance, cardiac output, and other measures. Coming to the central venous pressure. Now, when you are monitoring the central venous pressure in a LV failure, you are looking at the left ventricular volume. Now, left ventricular volume corresponds to left ventricular end diastolic pressure. That will be reflected in LA pressure. And by looking at the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, you are actually looking at the LA pressure. And instead of pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, you can look at the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure. And CVP is a reflection of the pulmonary artery diastolic pressure. But there are various other structures in between. For example, if there is a mitral valve disease, the LA pressure will not correspond to LVEDP. If there is a pulmonary vascular disease, again, your PCWP and LA pressure will not be correlating. And if there is RV dysfunction, then the CVP will not reflect the left ventricular function. So that's why the CVP has a limited value. But one of the advantage with CVP is you can actually get the central venous oxygen saturation. If it is less than 60%, that indicates cardiogenic shock or low cardiac output status. And the trend also can be used to see the response to various therapies. Of course, the pulmonary artery catheter is the vital diagnostic tool, especially in managing cardiogenic shock. So that allows continuous evaluation of the various hemodynamic parameters and also look at the response to therapy using these data. So what are the data obtained by the pulmonary catheter? You can get the RAP or CVP. You can also get the RV systolic pressure. You can get PA pressures, both pulmonary artery systolic pressure, diastolic pressure, mean pulmonary artery pressure, then PCWP. You can also get the cardiac output. You can also get the pulmonary venous saturation, which represent the mixed venous saturation. Now, continuous cardiac output monitoring is possible with specialized PA catheters. There is an intermittent heating of the blood in the right heart by a filament which is present in the right heart. And this signal is continuously captured by the thermistor at the tip of the catheter. And cardiac output is measured depending upon the drop in the temperature from the right ventricle to the PA, because it corresponds to the flow. So the main advantage of continuous cardiac output over conventional PAC is that you can avoid the repeated boluses of the cold saline, thus reducing the chances of infection and operator errors. So what are the hemodynamic parameters you derive from the pulmonary artery catheter, and how will you interpret? CVP, normally it's around 1 to 6. It represents the RV endostolic pressure. Again, pulmonary capillary wedge pressure represents left atrial pressure or LVEDP. You can also get cardiac index, that nothing but cardiac output by BSA, stroke volume index, and also right ventricular ejection fraction. So there are various derived parameters like systemic vascular resistance, pulmonary vascular resistance, and pulmonary artery pulsatility index. This is the recent data which is useful in monitoring various low cardiac output status, which I'll be describing later, and also CVP PCWP ratio and cardiac power output. Again, I will come to that. Now, you can also look at the left ventricular stroke work index, right ventricular stroke work index, systemic vascular resistance index, and pulmonary vascular resistance index. These are all very important when you are managing the cardiogenic shock. For example, if there is a RV dysfunction, you need to reduce the pulmonary vascular resistance if you know the pulmonary vascular resistance, and also monitor the response to various therapies. On the other hand, if it is LV dysfunction, you need to reduce the systemic vascular resistance. Now, coming to the pulmonary artery pulsatility index, this is a recent concept which actually is measured by the formula pulmonary artery systolic pressure minus diastolic pressure by RAP. Suppose if the pulmonary artery pressure is 25/10 and RA pressure is 10, then your PAPI will be the difference between systolic and diastolic, that is 15 divided by 10, 1.5. Now, less than 1.5 of PAPI indicates RV dysfunction. And if it is less than 0.9, it requires the institution of the right ventricular assist device. Now, this is the paper published by Gauson et al. And they inferred that the pulmonary artery pulsatility index predicts the right ventricular failure after left ventricular assist device implantation. The other parameter is CPO or cardiac power index. So what is it? It basically looks at the LV stroke work, and it is measured by CPO is equal to mean arterial pressure into cardiac output divided by 451. For example, if the cardiac output is 5 liter, mean arterial pressure is 80, then the cardiac power index is equal to 5 into 80 divided by 451, nothing but 0.88. Now, studies have shown that if the CPO is less than 0.6, the outcome is poor in a cardiogenic shock. This is from the shock trial registry, where they concluded that the cardiac power is the strongest hemodynamic correlate of mortality in cardiogenic shock. So it is important to look at the CPO when you are monitoring the various hemodynamic parameters. The other thing is the RAP-PCWP ratio. Now, if the RAP is 8 and your pulmonary capillary pressure is 10, then the RAP-PCWP ratio is 0.8. Now, if the ratio is increased, especially beyond 1.5, that indicates the increase in the ratio indicates the RV dysfunction, or it can be increased in high pulmonary vascular resistance. And it also indicates increased risk of adverse events. Now, you can also get various oxygen transport parameters by the pulmonary artery catheter. Your oxygen delivery, which depends upon the cardiac output, hemoglobin, and the arterial saturation. Higher the cardiac output, your oxygen delivery to the tissue will be higher. Now, the mixed venous saturation again depends upon the oxygen delivery. If it is reduced, your mixed venous oxygen saturation also gets reduced. So it is an indirect measurement of cardiac output. Again, you can calculate the oxygen uptake, which is nothing but the difference between the oxygen delivery and the venous oxygen content. And also you can look at the oxygen extraction rate ratio. Usually it remains normal in all states, If the cardiac output reduces also, this extraction ratio is maintained. That's why the mixed venous oxygen saturation becomes low. However, in extreme cases of low cardiac output, even the oxygen extraction ratio gets reduced, resulting in tissue hypoxia. So what about the various monitors in the ICU? Arterial blood pressure monitoring, it has to be continued till you wean off the vasoactive medications. CVP, one value is not good enough. The trend is important to look at the response to fluids, and central venous saturation again is useful. Monitoring the urine output is useful. PAC again has to be used whenever you are using various MCS and also when you are weaning off the MCS. So Dr. Sridhar has spoken about the pathophysiology of cardiogenic shock, pre-shock, mild shock, shock with lactic acidosis. Then it becomes profound shock and shock with which is refractory. Now we have to intervene before the profound shock happens, otherwise the outcome will be bad. And the various invasive hemodynamic monitors will help us in instituting the MCS at the early stage. So what are the recommendations by the SCAI or Heart Failure Society of America? They advise invasive hemodynamic assessment, which measures the ventricular filling pressure, cardiac output, and calculation of the systemic vascular resistance in the early diagnosis of cardiogenic shock. Again, continuous hemodynamic monitoring using pulmonary artery catheter is recommended in acute management of patients who require MCS or who are receiving the MCS. And pulmonary artery catheterization is useful to guide withdrawal of the various MCS devices and also withdrawal of the or weaning of the pharmacological support. And in patients without recovery of myocardial and end organ function, the hemodynamic monitoring is useful to assess the candidacy for the advanced heart failure therapies, including the MCS and transplantation. Again, Dr. Sridhar has mentioned the classification of the hemodynamic or cardiogenic shock. It may be LV dominant cardiogenic shock or RV dominant cardiogenic shock or biventricular shock. So that's why there is a role of CVP and PCWP monitoring together. In this, y-axis is pulmonary artery capillary wedge pressure. The x-axis is CVP. The green zone is normal. Suppose if the PCWP is high, CVP is normal, then you just need to support the left ventricle. On the other hand, with normal PCWP, high CVP, you need to support the right ventricle. But the problem arises when both are raised. Now, most of the time, when there is LV dysfunction, both CVP and PCWP may be raised. In such situations, you start with the left ventricular support. Sometimes both gets reduced and both will come to the normal level. Sometimes reducing the LVDP with LVAD, the pulmonary capillary pressure may come down, but the CVP may remain high. Again, with diuresis, reducing the RV preload, you can get the patient to the normal zone. But if the both CVP and the PCWP are high and you use a LVAD, sometimes the PCWP comes down, but the CVP remain high, which may require RVAD also. Now, suppose in a cardiogenic shock, you use the ECMO because you can institute the ECMO early at the bedside. Your cardiac output may go up, but your PCWP will remain high because of the high afterload with the peripheral ECMO. So when you use a left ventricular assist device such as Impella, your PCWP may come down. So the take-home message, it's important to look at the early signs of shock, such as tachycardia, low blood pressure, cold peripheries, delayed capillary filling, and tachypnea and oliguria. Other thing is hypotension doesn't mean low cardiac output, or normal blood pressure doesn't mean the cardiac output is good, because you can have a normal blood pressure or high blood pressure with severely low cardiac output with high SVR. So it is important to monitor the SVR along with the cardiac output to diagnose cardiogenic shock. And CVP may not reflect the left ventricular end-diastolic volume. The CVP PCWP ratio is useful in managing biventricular failure or left ventricular failure. Again, pulmonary artery pulsatility index is a useful guide for the right ventricular support when you are instituting a left ventricular assist device. The cardiac power in output is useful, especially you can predict the outcome. The mortality is high when the CPO is less than 0.6. And the trends in mixed venous oxygen saturation and central venous oxygen saturation do correlate with the cardiac output. So they are useful monitors. Very important thing is not to beat the tired horse. When you need more than one inotropes, probably you need to use early MCS. And this is based on the various hemodynamic parameters so far I have discussed. Thank you all.